Powered by Go-Goat Sports in partnership with TSN. This is Season 3. It is Episode 36 of the always fun and entertaining Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. And it is presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. For those of you watching at home, we've got Ray Ferraro in his hotel room in New York. And here I am in Denver, Colorado, on the cusp of Game 2. How much of Game 1 of the Western Conference Final were you able to digest, Ray? A fair amount of it?
Oh, almost all of it.
Yeah.
Day off, so had a chance to watch most of it. Missed some of it at dinner, but it's funny. A lot of times you think and expect something, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, did any of us think it was going to be 2-1 in Game 1? Of course not, but 8-6. And it looked
Crazy.
like, to me, it looked like, I don't know, it looked like Summer League hockey for a lot of it. Just really great Summer League hockey. Like there was no grind to it. And maybe that's the way that series is going to be played. Or maybe Game 2 will look a lot different. But man, oh man, with the goalies and the goals and there's lots there.
We've got Keith Jones from TNT, who's part of the Western Conference broadcast. He'll join us here in episode 36. And we'll talk more about both conferences, obviously, and headlines coming up here, Ray. I found myself, and I don't know, you always remind me of this, we're not invested in the game other than the jobs that we have to do and telling the stories and you analyzing the play as the game wears on. At one point in the third period, I was almost annoyed. I'm like, this isn't playoff hockey. Like, what are we doing here? And, Wayne Gretzky had a great quote as part of their post-game coverage where he basically said, look, I'm arguably the most offensive player to ever live. And here I am saying you can't win a Stanley Cup without playing defense. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I think what a lot of us were feeling, it's fun to see all these goals, but you get to a point where you're like, come on, this is the Western Conference Final. What's happening here?
Well, in my opinion is with so much talk about the offense, you can get swept up in that as a player. Yeah. And so really all you're not thinking about, for example, defending Nate MacKinnon or defending Connor McDavid. You're thinking about, we got to score.
Right. Yeah.
And so in that tidal wave, the coaches can't stop it in the game because it's a tidal wave. It just washes over the game. Now, I can guarantee you, without being in either of those rooms, their video meetings yesterday had nothing to do with the offensive zone. It had to do with the middle of the ice.
Yeah.
And then their own end for both teams. Because, so I'm doing, I did Game 1 last night of the Rangers, Wednesday night of the Rangers and Tampa. The Rangers give up the second fewest goals in the league. They check. They're not perfect. They don't. It's not like the 95 Devils. And Tampa, of course, had a bad night, an off night. We'll talk about that in a minute. But how are those Western teams going to play that style against teams that can score and check?
Yeah.
I think Game 2 looks a lot different. Like, I'm thinking this one's going to be like a 4-2 sort of game in Game 2. Goaltending notwithstanding. I mean, man, Mike Smith looks either brilliant or beleaguered.
Yeah.
I don't know what you could hang on him in Game 1, but he's going to have to be better in Game 2. And then the Kemper drama, I guess, is he available to play? Is he not available to play? Is it Pavel Francouz for the immediate and long? It'll be a big question for Colorado.
Headlines presented by our friends at Boston Pizza. Boston Pizza's got meal deals for everyone. Pizza, pasta, wings, salad, whatever you want, it's there. Pick it up or get it delivered to your door. Either way, BP will make sure all your people are happy tonight. Well, as we teed up, let's get into the Eastern Conference Final, the series that you're focused on. And so often, Ray, it comes down to the depth, right? And we make a big deal in the media during the Stanley Cup Final, anyway, of talking about the contribution of a third line, right? The depth beyond the top six normally helps propel a team to hoist the Stanley Cup. And in this case, we're looking at the kid line for the New York Rangers as they've been nicknamed, and that's Hedel, Refrenier, and Capocacco. They delivered in a big way in Game 1. These young guys, man, all first-round picks, they seem to have developed some quick swagger here in the postseason.
the really interesting, well, there's lots of interesting parts. So first of all, Heedle's the oldest guy on that line. He's 22.
Yeah.
And then Kako's 20 and Lafreniere's 20. So you've got these three absolute babies in the playoffs, and they play together. They did not play together a lot in the regular season. Once they got Vetrano and Kopp,
Yeah.
those guys moved into those top six roles. So then they put these three guys together. So they haven't played a lot before they got here. That's number one. Number two, most third lines, if you will, or matchup lines are usually veteran guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like think of Tampa Bay, they won with Gord, Goudreau, and Coleman.
Yeah.
All guys, Gord a little younger, but guys that have been around the block a little bit. They put them together. That's number two. Number three is they've got the perfect coach for it. It's like when you talk to Gerard Gallant, there's like just like an easiness to him.
Yeah.
But he's not easy. Like I've seen him on the bench in this playoffs. They were up against Carolina in one game, and their guys took a nap for a couple of shifts. They were up like 4-2 or something. And he came down to the forward end and he gave it to those guys. He's like, stop watching the game. Like, and he didn't just say it in three words.
Yeah.
Like it was lots. But there's a way that he's like, he was saying to us in the regular season, hey, you got to remember, these guys are young. Like there was no young but. He's like, these guys are young and they'll get there. It just depends when they're going to get there. He told us in the last 2 months, Philip Heedle has taken this enormous step forward.
Mm-hmm.
He's big, he's strong. He goes, but now he's playing with some assertiveness.
Nice.
Alexis Lafreniere is a bull. Like,
big,
man,
strong
that guy,
kid, right?
Oh, but Dregs, I didn't know the competitiveness
nice
was that obvious in his game. The third guy on the line is Kako, who I have a tough time just calling him Kako. It's like you have to say his full name.
You
have to say Capo Kako. It just all fits together. I've run into him a couple of times around the rink. He's a super nice kid.
Really
like
good kid.
Really nice.
Yeah.
He's articulate, but he's quiet. So he's learning to live in North America, to live in New York, to play in the NHL, and his path is a little slower. But that, John Cooper told us before the game, he goes, that line, this isn't the line we played in the regular season. These guys are completely different. And they got a glimpse of it yesterday. That's they've been exceptional for the Rangers. I'm really, really intrigued watching them play.
A little early for the Igor's better chant. I mean,
Never
I guess he
early.
Was in game one.
Never too early. And of course it's in New York, and and for years, like after the 1970s and early 80s in New York, they used to chant Potvin sucks.
Yeah.
Well, they used to chant Denny Potvin for those that are too young to know, but I was playing for Hartford and the fans were yelling Potvin sucks. He wasn't even in the game. He wasn't in the building. It didn't even matter. So like there's an energy in MSG, Dregs, you've been there plenty. Like there's an energy there, and as soon as that game got to 5-2, the first time I heard it, I just started to giggle. I'm like, the series is 45 minutes old.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter. So, but I'll tell you, Shesterkin is good. Shesterkin is great.
Yeah.
These are the two best goalies by quite some margin in the league. And I had a couple people tell me yesterday, the player they were worried most about in Tampa coming off the 9-day layoff was Vasilevsky. They knew that Tampa was going to be rough and disconnected, but they're worried about, you can't replicate cross ice passes. You can't replicate the speed of the game, and it's tough on a goalie. And he had a tough night.
Yeah, he'll bounce. I mean, as we'll talk about throughout the podcast here. I mean, his bounce back ability is off the charts. So there's no reason to second guess Andrei Vasilevsky at this point. Let's go back in the Western Conference final here. And, it became abundantly clear as Cale Makar started to pick through the Edmonton Oilers in game one that the Oilers have not faced a defenseman like Cale Makar or a pairing with Devon Toews and Cale Makar to this point of the postseason, right? Not only their ability to defend, just how good they are together in controlling the pace of play, but just boom, the transition ability from defense to offense, and all of a sudden there's another odd man rush going back the other way. And off the top, you kind of touched on something. Is Leon Draisaitl, we know he's still not healthy. He's got the ankle problem, right? Would that be a big enough deterrent for you to not split him up consistently with McDavid, to force Jared Bednar to choose where he wants to play that pairing? Because, yeah, you could put RNH at center ice, but Draisaitl maybe isn't fully healthy enough to play the role of center like you would want him to play.
Well, certainly we don't know his health and his capabilities. What he's doing is amazing, really. Like that, there's no way that ankle can feel 90%.
No.
There can't be. So I'm super impressed with what Draisaitl's doing, but can he handle the middle and the mobility that you need in the middle of the ice?
Yeah.
I don't know that. They'll know that. Having them both together, I think is better in this series in spits and spurts. I would like to get deeper into Colorado's defense and have somebody try to defend one or the other. I mean, you're going to play Makar and Taves against McDavid. Their skating ability, how they can close on a play that's busted, both of those guys would suit that better. Excuse me. If I'm Edmonton, I'm thinking about it just because if you get into that depth of the Oilers forwards, you're asking a lot of McLeod, right? You're asking a lot of some pretty young people and some pretty inexperienced people to play at that level, because I don't care that they've played through 2 playoff series. They're brand new at it all. And it does matter. It really does. So it's a problem. Makar and Taves are a problem. I don't think there's a defense pair in the league. I can't think off the top of my head that are built in that way.
Oh, so good.
They are so smooth with the puck. And just think, the Islanders got themselves into some cap hot water a few years ago, and they traded Taves for 2 second-round picks. Thank you very much if you're Colorado. like Devon Taves he's one of those guys that kind of just, no matter what he does, he'll be in the large shadow of Makar.
Yeah.
And he'll never really be appreciated for the player that he is. If Canada had an Olympic team last year of NHL players, he would have been on it.
Mm-hmm.
He was penned in on that team.
All right. Controversial goal, which has been talked about ad nauseum since the conclusion in Game 1 of the Western Conference Final. Of course, that's the offside goal. Dave Jackson from ESPN, right? I think he did a great job of dumbing it down for everybody, us included, right? In his video explanation, he's got his blue jeans out there, a kid acting the role of Nichushkin, exiting his own coming back.
I did give him crap for his low production value.
It was low production, but it's fine because, he was growing weary on Twitter of having to defend the call on the ice and then the video review process and why it was deemed a delayed offside and why the tag up worked and why it was a good play by Cale Makar. But you were among the many. And I mean, you've made your entire living around the National Hockey League. You just have. So you've seen it, you've done it all, and you've been there. Does the NHL need to, if not redefine, and maybe just change the language of how this rule is interpreted, and maybe get rid of distinct kicking motion as language used that would apply to the Blake Coleman disallowed goal in the Battle of Alberta series as well?
Okay, so this is after talking with a bunch of people that are kind of around the edges of the decisions.
Yeah.
The biggest problem the NHL has now, when they started with, and this is me taking a mishmash of their ideas, stealing some of them and putting them into mine.
Perfect.
So the NHL went down the road of video review. Each time they add a layer to video review, it's like cutting another piece of prosciutto thinner.
Agreed.
It's just like we're trying to get it right. Then we get it right, more right. Then we get it more right.
Yeah.
And pretty soon, you don't even know what the hell you're doing. Like these rules, honestly, there are several rules that are absurd. They really are. And they're absurd because video review has not made them less complex. They've made them more complex. The best part of Dave Jackson's video was anybody age 10 and above is going to understand that rule.
Yeah.
And he doesn't love the rule either.
No, he doesn't,
Like
I'm sure.
clear possession. And what is clear possession? When Connor McDavid comes out from behind the net and he's got the puck and he's got that motion, that speed, and everybody's up out of their seats and he pushes the puck 2 feet in front of him. That means he doesn't have control of the puck.
Yeah.
Oh, garbage. He's got control of the puck. Right? So now the reverse angle that we don't see a lot, right? The league always has angles we don't see until later on. But the reverse angle shows that Makar's stick is not on the puck.
Right.
So that makes the play, that little bit makes the play all good.
Like it was like a 2-inch dump in, right? By definition.
Like, that's not what it's for. That shouldn't have been reviewed. It should have been a goal.
Yeah.
If the rule is defined in a way that everybody can understand it.
Right.
Front edge, leading edge, back edge, foot in the air, foot down. Those are all things that happened to what, when we grew up, was the simplest rule possible. Yeah. Offside. Puck has to go in first. There you go. Finished.
Yeah.
Now, the distinct kicking motion, Blake Coleman had the money quote on it. He said, if the rule is distinct kicking motion and it took a review that long, there's nothing distinct about the motion.
Yeah.
Now, this is, I think it is ludicrous, ridiculous that they say it's a safety issue. Oh, stop it.
Yeah.
I think if you don't throw the puck in the net, like pick it up, catch it, and throw it in the net, it should count.
Yeah, don't take goals down, right?
And so, if you think about it, a kicking motion, you can tell what a kicking motion is. All you have to do is put in your mind, everybody, we're talking about kicking a football. If you do that, it doesn't count. Anything else, it counts.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can come, so that takes away the potential for injury that everybody seems to be so worried about, of somebody lying in the crease trying to cover the puck, which, by the way, is a penalty shot and they don't do. But anyway, if somebody's lying in the crease, nobody is going to come in and try and kick the puck into the net because it wouldn't count anyway.
No.
I'm telling you, Dregs, I watched that. I'm like, goal. They went to review and they're showing all the angles. We're sitting around and I'm like, that's a goal.
Mm-hmm.
They came out, they said no goal. They explained why, and I still said goal.
Goal. I don't disagree.
I want them to reword it, Dregs, because I've used this before. Our game is at a place that it's never been. It's better than in so many ways. Why not keep trying to make it better?
Yeah. Yeah, and they will. And there'll be dialogue, whether or not there's tweaks or changes. That'll be up to the general managers and the board of governors. But
and hockey ops. I mean, come on, guys. You're not guardians of the game.
No. Thanks to Boston Pizza for presenting headlines on a weekly basis here on Ray and Dregs. Our interviews on the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast are brought to you by Canadian Club Whiskey, who are asking, are you over beer? Try a refreshing CC Ginger Ale with lime next time you're having a drink or watching the game. And how about this? The CC and Ginger Ale mixed and ready in a can. It is now available pretty much across Canada in all provinces. We've had the opportunity to crack one of these bad boys open. It takes all the fuss, the muss, the challenges of mixing your own cocktail out of the equation. If you can open a beer can, Ray, you can open the CC and Ginger mixed in a can. It's perfect.
I can do that. I've practiced. I can access that. Hey, by the way, I just see, for those on YouTube, this is what I need to see. Darren Dreger between two lamps.
Looks good. All right, Ray Ferraro, shocking that we'd have three men in hotel rooms in varying cities and the United States. You're in New York, and Keith Jones from TNT, who joins us on the podcast, is also in Denver, where I am. We're just living the dream here, eh, Jonesy, as we get ready for Game 2. How have things been?
Everything's good, buddy. Everything's good. Crazy Game 1 for sure.
Yeah.
Lots to talk about. Lots of goals to discuss. Not a lot of defense to talk about, but we're having a good time.
Okay, my first question has nothing to do with the game. Well, it kind of does. How did you get between the benches there?
Oh.
You're pretty snug in there, Jonesy.
It's how I got out of there, Ray, is the better question, because I slid in there. There's no door to get in. And a lot of rinks, I give them a lot of credit and thank them for allowing us to open the door to get in. But no, you have to climb in. I'm not very agile. Wasn't when I played. I'm certainly not now with the two knees that I have going. So I got in there, okay, and then I didn't leave. I stayed there the whole game. I listened.
Oh my
to them.
God!
I never got out, because there's no real exit out of there, and I didn't want the crowd to see me fall down, because there was a 50-50 chance I would faceplant to get out of that thing. So I waited for the whole game. Game ended, and I got out of there, but I was a wobbly character jumping out. I needed help from somebody. One of the camera guys kind of allowed me to rest my hand on his shoulder before I get out of
I
there.
will be looking for this tonight for Game 2. I'm watching you get in, and I'm watching you get out.
It's entertaining. You will enjoy it, but I didn't sleep well last night thinking about how I'm going to get in and out of there. I can tell you that.
Okay, so the last series we're in Carolina, and so I got to jump over the boards to get in there. It's not really a big place, but it's bigger than Denver. So as I get in there, I kind of got a big ass. So I jump in there. Now I've got my pants rip right down the seam and across the pocket, just high enough so my jacket covers it. Otherwise, my butt's hanging out for the rest of the broadcast. So I get to New York, I got to go and buy a new pair of pants, because same thing, no door. I rip my pants up there, man. It's a danger, Jonesy.
It is. I believe me, I'm not surprised, Ray. I've been lucky in that regard. I've ripped a pocket before. I've caught the pocket on something on the way in.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
They're asking a lot of us to get in and out of it. Let me tell you.
So take us through Game 1 here, Jonesy. 14 goals total, including the empty netter. As Ray and I talked about earlier in the podcast, I found myself, and I'm not this seasoned, wily old hockey guy, but I found myself at one point in the third period going, okay, this isn't playoff hockey. Like, what are we doing here? But from an American broadcast perspective on TNT, I mean, are you just loving it? 14 goals, lack of defense, 4 goalies in and out, all the shenanigans of that night?
Yeah, it was a really crazy game. And, I think we're used to playoff hockey seeing tight checking, especially when you get to the conference finals. So it was a little bit surprising from that regard. But when you look at the two teams, that's how they're built. Yeah. They're built to go. The game never seemed safe, even when it was 7-4. You still felt like, or 7-3, you still felt like Edmonton would have a chance to come back. They never looked panicked on the bench. They never looked tired, which was surprising to me with the altitude. But I guess maybe playing against Calgary in the previous round gave them some benefit with the altitude there as well. But no, it was for an American audience, it's great. Mm-hmm. Fans want goals. They want to see the star players. The star players all picked up points in the game. Confidence is not going to be an issue. The storylines aren't going to be about a lack of production by any of the particular stars that are being featured, including McDavid and MacKinnon. Mm-hmm. So all of those pressures that can mount during a season or series have already been, alleviated. So I think it's going to mean more goals. I think it's going to be more crazy games, and the goaltenders aren't going to be feeling very confident by the end of this series.
Jonesy, I mentioned the Dregs earlier, and I wonder if you felt it because you're standing right there. You remember when you played those games and there's almost like a tidal wave of something, either a lot of turnovers or a lot of goals or, in the day, a lot of fights or whatever. There's like this tidal wave that goes through the game and you can't stop. The coaches are trying, the players are, and it just doesn't stop. Is that what it felt like at all?
Yeah, it did. That's a great way to look at it, Ray. There was waves of momentum that shifted in the game throughout, and both teams capitalized on that. And I will say there was a lot more urgency from Colorado in period number 3 as far as defending went. Jared Bednar was pretty animated behind the bench and pushing his guys to, stay with it, recognize that you're going to give up chances against this Oilers team, and when they're down, they're going to really go for it. So I thought Colorado, they bent. They ultimately didn't break, but there's going to be moments in this series both ways that defensively they're going to be challenged, and they're going to have to find ways to, manage those moments and find a way to keep pushing their game the other way, because this is not going to be about defense. It's going to be extremely entertaining, and it's going to be frustrating if you're a guy that's trying to hold on to a lead from either of the coaches' perspectives.
I noticed yesterday in our game 1, in the first 5 minutes, there was more barking back and forth than there was the entire previous series. Like, nobody said anything in the Carolina. I mean, the only one that did was Tony DeAngelo. And, half the time they were ignoring him. It's kind of like when I used to bark and everybody'd be like, yeah, you're like a little chihuahua. And, and I would, So anyways, I noticed right away, you can tell we're at a different stage of things. Did you see that too?
No, I didn't see it, which is surprising. So I went from the Tampa, Florida series where shockingly there was not a lot of conversation between the two teams. Toronto, Tampa, there was a lot. There was a lot of interaction. There was a lot of that, where you really challenged the mental toughness of the opposition, where some of the veteran guys on Tampa were really getting under the skin of some of the younger players with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Didn't see it in round number 2. I thought it was a mistake by the Florida Panthers. Guys like Lomberg and that Tampa just eliminated them from the equation. They were non-factors. They couldn't get anything going physically. They couldn't get anything going emotionally. They were just ignored. And that was something I thought Tampa did really well in round number 2. Last night, or the night before in Colorado, there was no conversations between either team. It was almost like a game that was – it's like a game that was late in a series. When you get to game 6, it all stops and they play. Like game 7 of Pittsburgh and the Rangers, there wasn't a conversation between either team the entire game. It was just hockey all the way through. I was surprised by that, to be honest with you, and maybe that played into why there was such crazy swings of momentum. They never really caught up to that part of the game. I'd expect there to be a lot more of it going in with players like Cassian, their ability to get involved in that regard. I would think he would be more active that way.
Any word on Darcy Kemper and what's up with him?
Not yet. I have not. I'm heading over the rink right after we're done here, so maybe we'll get a little more information there. But that was a weird one. He had an issue with his pad before the second period, and then all of a sudden he disappeared in the middle of period number 2. So we weren't 100% sure what happened. I don't think we've got a whole lot of clarity other than it was an upper body injury.
Yeah, it seems like a stretch that he'll be back. That's the way it seems.
And so just think, you're Colorado, you've built this team, and now Pavel Francouz is your guy. Like, it's amazing, like that.
It is. And isn't he the guy that had like double knee surgery, double hip surgery just a couple of years ago, missed an entire season?
He feels great. Other than that, he feels great.
And he had to stretch his leg out to make a great save there in period number 3 as well. So he was challenged. He hung in there, but I mean, all I see is goals coming. I mean, I don't see that stopping. So I'd be doing some homework today on who the backup is for Colorado now if Kemper's not in, because there's a good chance you're going to see him. Like,
do you see, based on what you saw in game 1, prior to the start of the postseason, it doesn't apply now. I mean, Daryl Sutter of the Calgary Flames talked about any team playing Colorado for the most part, it's a waste of 8 days, right? Now, it was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, and we're in the Western Conference Finals, so we're not going to disrespect the Oilers to that degree. But do you see this series going deep, 6 or 7? And if you do, then that means you expect Edmonton is going to find a way to push back here.
Yeah, I do, Dregs. At first I was thinking it'd be a 5-game series and Colorado would win it. But after watching the way Edmonton came back in game number 1, watching their demeanor, watching their amount of energy that they had, I'm always looking in the altitude to see if the guys are huffing and puffing. They weren't. Their key players looked fresh. And often the McDavid-Draisaitl line would be on the ice against MacKinnon, and McKinnon's line would be working hard in the offensive zone, forcing them to defend. McKinnon's line would change, 40 seconds in, and McDavid would stay out there. Yeah. And so would Draisaitl. And they'd extend that 20 seconds, and they'd still get a chance going the other way. Did not look like overextending their shifts affected them in Colorado either, which, again, at the altitude was very surprising to me. So game 2 can be a lot tougher when you've stayed in the city for a few days. That can be a challenge with the altitude when you're starting to adjust, but you're not fully there yet. So that's going to be something to watch for here tonight. If Edmonton has, the same skating legs that they had in the previous game, and how much did they use up in trying to come from behind in period number 3 in game number 1?
Anybody stand out to you other than the obvious? Like you go, oh, that guy's better than I thought, because you see him close.
There's a couple defensemen in Edmonton. Kulak, who we watched a lot last year with Montreal, that helped them on their run. I thought he was very good. I think he's a very underrated defenseman, and there was a very smart pickup by the Oilers to grab him. He's kind of solidified things on the back end for them. I liked his game. I thought Duncan Keith has a lot to offer. He's obviously going to want to play better defensively than he did in game number 1, but his ability to move that puck quickly is something I think they're going to benefit from. And Bouchard on the back end, he's got that big, heavy shot.
Yeah,
I would use him on the number 1 power play unit ahead of Tyson Barrie. I felt like Colorado didn't respect Barrie's shot and often allowed him the opportunity to shoot if he wanted to. I think they were kind of giving him that opportunity, and he passed it up a couple of times. He did shoot it, but I think Bouchard might be a better option for them. We'll see what they do as the series moves along.
So what do you do on the off day? You went to baseball game yesterday?
We went to the ball game, and then lots of hockey talk with Gretz. Anytime you have him around, we're so lucky to have his company, his availability, and then for the fans to be able to hear, guys like him and Mess and Chelly and discuss hockey at this time of the year. It's a real treat. It's great to see that those guys are now involved in that side of the game. For so many years, it was, it wasn't something that seemed like it was appealing to them. So it's great to see that they're enjoying it, embracing it, and giving the fans something different to think about.
Good stuff. Well, Jonesy, we'll let you go. You've got a game to prep for, game 2 of the Western Conference Final. You got to water the plant behind you. Don't let that thing crumple up and dry up and die.
It's beautiful. I like it. It's very you, Jonesy.
I'll probably die before it. Believe me.
Hey, I just had a thought, Jonesy. You're going over the rink now, you said?
Yeah.
Talk to the crew. Can there be a little stool put in there?
I wish there could, Ray. I don't think there's enough room in that spot, to be honest with you.
Because I'm thinking about next round if I got to go in.
It's a good idea. Yeah, there's a good
my
chance
legs are pretty short. You might have noticed. That's a big jump.
It's not the greatest spot. Panger's in Edmonton, though, and they're building a little spot for him. I can't wait to see what happens with that. I get to go upstairs for that one. Oh, yeah.
That's so great.
Good to catch up with you guys.
Hey, all right, Jonesy. Thanks, buddy.
See you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Could be my favorite part of the podcast, Ray, and that's where we get to raise that glass of 44-year-old CC to Keith Jones, who joined us in episode 36, presented by our friends at Canadian Club Whiskey. 44-year-old release is now available everywhere, and Jonesy he's a whiskey drinking type of guy. I don't know how much he drinks, but he just seems old school Ontario guy, just loves to talk hockey and horses and farming and things like that.
Jonesy does seem like, and I've seen it, that the stories can roll from Jonesy. Yeah. He's terrific at what he does. whether he was in the studio like he was for 10 years or he's now doing the games, and he's smart and funny and brings a good perspective to his gig, and it was awesome he was able to come on and join us.
But it's why the best in the business always find a home covering hockey. I mean, you with ESPN, Keith Jones with TNT, and Eddie O. I mean, go down the list, right? Terrific storytellers, but good people, and that goes a long way in staying in what is a difficult industry from time to time.
Yeah, for sure it is. And he does the radio. He's been the morning radio guy in Philly for years, and most popular radio show forever. I'm going to challenge you, Dregs, right now.
Okay.
Your sole purpose of Game 2 is to get video of Jonesy getting in and out of that box between the benches. That's it. I don't even care if you put a report out. That's the story.
Oh, he is so terrified of what's going to happen, trying to squeeze into that little spot at Ball Arena in Denver. It's outstanding.
I'll tell you, maybe the grittiest part of Game 1 would have been that Jonesy went in there before warm-up and never came out. At some point, do you not have to go to the bathroom?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're hydrating, right? I mean, and with 14 goals, he's doing a lot of talking.
There's a lot of talk in there, man.
All right, time for our weekly visit on the podcast with Chris Abbott from Coolbet.co. And, for those following us, enjoying three good-looking young men on YouTube, are we ever comfortable? Ray, you're in a nice spot in New York City. Chris, where are you? Your condo in Toronto finally, or are you traveling somewhere as well?
Yeah. That's right. I'm home now. You guys are always giving it to me about being on the road, but it looks like somebody else is
downtown
is in
Renaissance
a hotel here.
and living the dream here in Denver.
Well, I'm a little disappointed that you tightened up the camera because
I didn't. I don't know what happened.
Because you were perfectly framed, that gigantic head, right between those two lights. You remember the interviews between two ferns? I'm like, this is between two lights. Dregs is just sitting there. There it is. Look at it's a nice light too.
Yeah, oh yeah. Not sure what happened. I had it perfectly framed. Anyway, getting ready for the Western Conference Final, Game 2 as we record episode 36 here, Abs. Take us into the Eastern Conference Final, and it feels like, if you're a gambling man, which we know you certainly are, that it's a timely place to throw a little bit of money down on the Tampa Bay Lightning, isn't it?
Well, I think so. I mean, I did it in the first round against Toronto, and I didn't have a chance to do it in the second round against Florida, but they've fallen behind. So coming into this playoff series, I think they're about a -130, -140 favorite over the New York Rangers, and they're about +250 to win the Stanley Cup. At just losing Game 1 after having 6 months off or whatever it was, they're now +365 to win the Stanley Cup, and they're an underdog in the series. I mean, you've wholly got to think that it was the old rust thing kicking in, and I think Justin Bourne sent out a good stat yesterday that the last 7 times a team had that much time off, they lost Game 1. I don't think that's any real indicator of how the rest of the series is going to go. But then again, I've got a long shot bet riding on the Rangers for the
Okay, so let me ask you this then.
Let
me ask you this. So Vasilevsky's won 17 in a row after a loss in the playoffs. That's impossible. It can't happen, except he's won 17 in a row. So when you look at that number, does it make you go, 18's not possible, and you jump that way, or do you just keep plowing on the train? The Ranger or the Tampa's won 8 straight Game 2s. Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah, well, I think you get yourself in trouble when you start riding trends like that. A lot of people lost money on the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 7 because they hadn't lost at home, right? I think you got to look a little deeper into the game, Ray, which is what you are so good at doing. And this Tampa Bay team has been there, done that. They faced adversity in these playoffs and playoffs before. And there is something to, okay, we'll get our split on the road. We'll go back home. We'll be fine. And we've got the best goaltender in the world. There'll be a little bit of desperation out of Tampa Bay. And I wonder, maybe not inside the Rangers locker room, but maybe around the team, if there's a little like, oh, hey, we're up a game we're getting, if there's a little bit of surprise there, it'd be interesting to see the dynamic between the two teams. But then again, I just love the head coaching matchup in this round. I think for me, as high flying as the Western Conference is, I really like the two coaches, whichever one of these guys come through.
You mentioned the high flying Western Conference. I mean, it's reasonable to expect, as again, we record episode 36, we're not going to see 14 goals in game 2, isn't it? How do you even try and guess at what the over should be on the Western Conference final?
I think game 1, it was at 7, and I think that hit in the first period. So like just insane, because we talked about totals in the NHL playoffs before, and it's generally 5.5. Like it was 5.5 in New York last night. That game went over as well, where a lot of people would have expected to take the under. So I don't think there's a number high enough for me not to take the over in the other series, especially now that, there were goaltending questions coming in, and now there's goaltending, final exams. I don't know what's harder than a question, but and then you still got these two teams who are not, going to play the trap all night, and they like to freewheel it. So I think you take over. And if there is an under along the way, so be it. You just keep betting the over, whatever it is. It's never going to be higher than 7. It might even get to 7.5. But I mean, you're never going to see a total in hockey.
That seems absurd. In this series, it's going to be 4-3 after the first period tonight. I know they're both going to try and check and do all that stuff, but I did get a laugh out of Jay Woodcroft saying, we did score 6 goals on their goalie tandem. Did he notice they scored 7 on his goalie tandem? Come on.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, one of the things, though, because people wrote Edmonton off after the game 1 against Calgary, and it's like, hey, they did still score 6 goals. So, if they can lock it down at all, then
this would make me think
of it.
This would make me think about Edmonton in a good way, only for game 2. We just talked about that Tampa Bay's 8-0 in their last 8 game 2s. So from game 1 to game 2, you have to make adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the first time you've seen that other team in the playoffs. It doesn't matter what happened 3 months ago or a month ago. So you make adjustments. Can Edmonton make enough adjustments? Do they split up Draisaitl and McDavid and try and score only 4 goals and win? Or do they need them together and then you get exposed down the lineup? Like that to me is an adjustment that's really critical tonight.
I will say when it comes to the betting of this, like it is hard to be like, okay, I'm going to bet there's going to be 8 goals in a hockey game in a conference final. It sounds crazy. There are better ways to break it up. You can bet on both teams to score in a given period. You can bet on over 1.5 goals in a period, over 2 goals in a period. So I think that's kind of a smarter way to look at it. Or what a lot of people would have done in game 1 is bet player props. Bet on McDavid to score. Bet on Kadri to score. Bet on MacKinnon. Because if there's going to be a ton of goals, somebody's got to score them. And there's more value in cashing a goal.
All right, why don't we wrap up episode 36 segment here with the discussion we had in episode 35, and that was Champions League, right? And Ray, you just insisted Liverpool was going to win. Why are we even having this conversation?
I don't even recall that.
What happened? I mean, obviously Real Madrid is a good club, but holy smokes, this one had to take people by surprise.
They had 2 shots on net.
Yeah.
Like Liverpool had plenty of opportunity. I think they just was not their day. And I hope nobody took my gambling advice on that.
I did.
Take my advice, Abbott. You bet that on your own. You're full of crap.
I took your son's gambling advice. Exactly. Probably even worse.
And then he went to his 12 and under basketball game.
And collected from the rest of his teammates who put the money down on him.
All right, Chris, thanks for joining us, buddy.
All right, guys, thanks so much.
Time for Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. Every week we invite you to fire your questions our way on Twitter and Instagram at Ray and Dregs or on the website rayanddregs.com. Ask Ray and Dregs Anything is presented by Doer, the world's most comfortable pants and shorts. Remember, use code RND15 and you're going to save 15% off everything. Check it out at doer.com. All right. Instagram from Ryan White. Ray, did you ever score a goal that you thought shouldn't have counted, or one that you believe should have counted but didn't count?
I'm going to say no, because we didn't have review.
Right. So it was cut or dried, right? It was like
it was finished, and
yeah.
and there was no video, so you couldn't go to the bench and look at it to continue your argument. It was like you felt you either got a break or you got screwed on a call, but it was over.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say no. That's a really good question.
It is an interesting question. I just assumed there would have been one.
But I'm sure Blake Coleman today, he's having a coffee and he goes, that goal should have counted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like you would always.
You're never going to change his mind on that. No,
and he would see it 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
We never saw it again.
From Jason on Twitter, this is a bit of a loaded question around the Philadelphia Flyers, who we know are going through a carousel of interviews with potential coach candidates. Not a question specific coaching from Jason, but he's asking, what can the Flyers do to improve? They appear to have little direction, according to Jason. And right now the priority is the coach, but after that, I mean, is it trying to land Johnny Gaudreau if he goes to free agency? I mean, what is it? They need some big pieces.
They've got to be faster, more skilled, more aggressive. The biggest challenge I see there is, how do you do all that in one summer?
It's a lot.
So say you go and you're able to sign Johnny Gaudreau. And would that be, I don't know, Dregs, is that $8.5 million? Is it $8 million? What would it be?
Yeah, it's up there. I mean, pushing 9.
Okay, so let's say 9, because it's easy math.
Yeah.
That would be 9 over 7, $63 million. I think they've got 4 years left at Kevin Hayes at 7.
Yeah.
They've got Rasmus Ristolainen at $5 million for some reason. So those 3 players, now you're at $21 million.
Mm-hmm.
And you've just added Gaudreau to the picture. Like it's not just one signing. I watched them. I had them a few times down the stretch, and the lack of speed and skill really stood out to me. But I do think, when he says directionless, I would say this: every team has to identify what they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be everything to everybody. Gerard Gallant, his team's 3 wins from the Stanley Cup. He said the other day, we're not perfect, but we know the best way we can play. And I think the teams that can accept that and build around what they want to be have the best chance of success.
I mean, that's a terrific direction by Gallant and the Rangers. All right. How about a couple of fun ones to wrap up Ask Ray and Dregs Anything? Brian Mudryk just loves to jab at us.
No, he can't. He needs to get on the course more, which is 4 days a week. But
yeah, his Instagram account is @MuddyLivesHere. So don't be afraid to follow Brian Mudryk. Take a couple of shots at him. He'll engage with you. His question is directed at me. Has Dregs ever Speedo modeled while in Europe? No.
Is there a story to this?
I know there isn't. There actually isn't. The only story I have that relates to this has nothing to do with me. We were in Copenhagen, as you remember, and we were staying right beside the water, right? And shockingly enough, I went down to grab a sandwich for lunch, whatever. It was like 25 degrees Celsius. And the people in Copenhagen don't mind getting naked and going for a skinny dip during their lunch breaks. So,
as you would.
And then they come out and they towel off and they get dressed and they go back to work. I mean, that's what you do in Copenhagen. But no Speedo for me. All right. EPI management. So @Edwards Projects Inc. You know who this is, don't you?
This is my golf buddy. He's got a problem. He's not doing enough work because what is his... Okay.
His question is, did Ray pack enough underwear for his East Coast journey?
Okay. New York City, as you know, there's a lot of things here.
Lots of stuff there.
So I took my laundry in, Because the answer is no. How could you possibly? I've been gone all but 1.5 days since May 1st.
Yeah.
So I take my laundry into this wash and fold place. Oh my God. They fold your stuff. It fits in a box that's this wide.
You would love
It's amazing. When I opened the box the other day, I'm like, oh, look at this. Oh, my underwear's folded in these little cubes and the t-shirts are folded perfect. It's the best. Love it.
Simple pleasures. So I used to do this. I don't know, it'll depend on my travel for the Stanley Cup final. And I think you've heard this story. Historically, when I travel in the Stanley Cup final, I take 14 pairs of underwear, right? And no, there's a reason. I know you can get them laundered as you just described. What I would do is, excuse me, I would go 14 days, so 14 changes, and then just leave them and buy all new underwear. It was my way of culling the underwear herd on an annual basis.
Oh, okay, but hang on. How much underwear do you have?
Well, I leave the 14 behind. So I leave them.
No, but at home you have 14 pairs?
Oh, no, I've got like 30. Easy.
Oh.
Nah.
What's wrong with you?
I'm
saving them like a family heirloom?
I don't know, man. Socks and underwear are just ridiculous. Like I've got 50 pairs of socks and, probably only 20 pairs because I don't have matching socks and it's just disaster.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Now that, as Mason was getting older.
Yeah.
Is he just stealing your socks?
Always. Yeah.
Yeah, I got no socks in my drawer. Riley's wearing them all.
Golf socks especially, right?
Gone. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The short ones? Yeah.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah, it pisses me off.
Gone.
We battle over that all the time. All right, so best case
this might
scenario.
Be on the, sorry, this must be on the too much information thing here.
Yeah.
I got 7 pair.
Of underwear?
That's it.
Wow. Interesting.
Don't you do laundry? Do you guys have a washing machine?
Yes, I know. It's obscenely over the top. I get it. It's just, it's one of those things. But that was also part of it. So I'd take the 14 pairs and I'd leave them there. And then when I got home, I'd get into the excess and maybe I'd buy another 14 pair. It was a way to just keep the new underwear wheel.
I'm sure housekeeping's thrilled with you.
Yeah, I know.
As you leave your shorts down.
Yeah, I leave them in the garbage. I don't do anything crazy. All right, buddy. So, you're just living the dream in the Eastern Conference final, right?
Yep. Day off today. I think I'm going to the Yankees game, though.
Oh, good for you.
Today, which is a nice break, just from all of it. Lots to do. There's, but it's good stuff. You know what, Dregs?
Yeah.
I've not done a conference final in a while. And I've never done a final, so I'm really, really quite excited to get through. I miss home. I miss the boys. I miss Cam, and but that's part of the gig.
All right, buddy. Well, enjoy it as you are. Enjoy the Yankees game, and we'll be back and forth. And I'll let you know. I'll get that video, Jonesy. I will do my level best to get that video of Keith Jones.
I would love that, and I'm going to leave on this one note. It looks like you made your bed behind you.
I did.
Yeah. That's exceptional.
I've got I have arguably the smallest room in Denver, Colorado. Normally you've got a desk, and a lounge chair you can sit in. And, we saw with Jonesy a potted plant. I don't have any of that. I've got like a countertop desk and nothing. This is the only option for me to do the podcast from. So I had to make the
perfect.
Right.
Well, way to make the best. I mean, right between those lamps. It's our new, we can use a new segment between 2 lamps.
All right. Thanks for your time, Ray. Huge shout out to our partners who make the podcast possible. Our title sponsor, our good friends at Canadian Club Whiskey, who ask, are you over beer? Coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website. Buy Boston Pizza, pick it up or get it delivered. Let Boston Pizza do the cooking tonight. And buy Doer. Use code RND15 to save 15% off everything. Check them out at doer.ca. That is episode 36 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. We're on the road, and we'll bring you more of the same in episode 37. Be well, everybody.